I want to go over four players, Tyler, that have been fantasy gems for us so far through the early part of the season. One of them had a fantasy quarter, I'll say that. But let's go over four players real quick that have been fantasy gems. And I want to get your opinion if you think it's you're buying it or if you think that's a sell moment, right? Let's start with J.K. Dobbins, who is playing behind one of the best offensive lines in football right now in this Los Angeles Chargers team, who Jim Harbaugh, shout out to him, turned this thing around instantly, better than we all had thought. But J.K. Dobbins has probably been the heart of this thing all when it comes to fantasy, rushing for over 100 yards in both games, scoring a touchdown in both games, second leading, I think he's the leading rusher in the league right now, second in fantasy points.
I believe he's the leading rusher, yeah.
Leading rusher in the league right now, J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, I think it would be a stretch, or I think it would be a bad conversation to have. Oh, is J.K. going to be the leading rusher of the year? Like, I don't think that's the right conversation to have. But do you think J.K. Dobbins will be a top 15 rusher the rest of the season? Running back, I'll say, in fantasy. That's the conversation I want to have. J.K. Dobbins, top 15 running back in fantasy the rest of the way, or no?
If I had to say yes or no, I would say no.
Say no as well. Top 20.
Like, are you saying points per game or just total? I think it could get close to that if he plays a full season. Like, you're gonna have guys who get hurt. But I would say around there, yeah.
I'm trading him. I'm trading for that cost right there. Top 20. Send J.K. Dobbins, because I think you alluded to it, but you didn't want to come out. The injury risk, it's there, man.
Yeah.
You know it's there. The thing is with him, it's like if he does play a whole year, you're probably going to get, top 20 production out of him. It's just there is such a big risk with him. Throughout his career, he's been injured. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, 17 games is a lot for that kind of player. A violent runner, too. Like, we know he's kind of a violent runner. So I would
agree.
To sell on JK.
I would sell. No, I agree. I would sell, too, if I had him right now. It just depends on, like, what you can get, though, because I do think that there's a lot of people out there that also agree with that, though, that won't trading is difficult in fantasy football at times when it comes to these kind of players and like players that you pick up just because they got that like stigma on them that's like, oh, this guy, you picked him up.
Yeah, as a waiver player, you're just trying to trade him.
Like you're trying to trade him, but it's like, bro, this guy's been fantastic in fantasy football, and he could be for the full season like Puka Nacua last year. I guarantee people were trying to sell him early on. They couldn't sell them, and they were probably actually, happy that they ended up holding him. But like these kind of guys at times can be difficult to sell off just because of that. But I will say, like, if I can sell him for, even if he's like included in a deal for somebody else, if I can include like him and another piece to trade up for a running back and get like, I don't know, like a back end RB1 or a high end RB2, like if I could maybe even get like, who would you rather have, him or James Cook? I'd rather take James Cook.
James Cook, easily. I think the best way to move a J.K. Dobbins, and it's tried and true, is you always pair that up with another underperforming big name, right? So you give somebody the waiver player who's outperforming, and you give them the player who maybe is a little bit more questionable. Your Terry McLaurin, your Michael Pittman, your, just a player who maybe hasn't reached expectations, and you pair them up. You use the name value of the other player and the performance of the other player, pair those guys up and go get a floor player, a player now that you've established a new floor. That's always the way I've done it. It's like, especially when like a Christian Kirk, you can use the name Christian Kirk right now with J.K. Dobbins and be like, look, I'm giving you a name. I'm giving you a player who's performing. Put those together. You have two starters now. So especially with the amount of injuries, especially with buys coming up, use that type of name of J.K. Dobbins to elevate your floor.
And especially to like a Isaiah Pacheco manager, like somebody like that's desperate, that needs a running back. Like those are the kind of guys that I would try to target.
You can always smell that desperation.
Absolutely. And especially like you said, once you get to the bye weeks, the desperation really kicks up at that point.
What about another free agent, Rashid Shaheed, another name who is playing well right now, seeing 2 deep touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. I like this kid, man. I'm never a big big play guy ever sees my roster. Normally, I'm always shipping those guys out. I'm in on Rashid Shaheed this year, and I said this on a podcast, Tyler, and I said it half-heartedly, but I'm starting to put some legs behind it. It would not shock me to see Rashid Shaheed outperform Chris Olave this year. It wouldn't, especially because we haven't even got to the point yet where they're using Shaheed in all the ways that I think they're planning on using him this year. We've just seen the deep shit. We saw 3 rushes last week. I think we're just sniffing the surface of it. Am I crazy?
I mean, I think okay. If I could trade Rashid Shaheed for Chris Olave, I would definitely do that.
That's not what I said, though. I said,
but you're saying outproduce him. Yes, you're saying outproduce him. So if you're saying that, then you would want Rashid Shaheed.
No, market value is different than the value in my.
All right,
that's
I would be okay, fine. But I like, for me personally, see, I'm sorry, and maybe this is just me being a hater. I'm just not believing in the Saints offense entirely yet. Do I think it's going to be okay throughout the season? Yes. I think it'll be better than last year, but I'm not fully on board with them being like an elite unit that's going to put up a high-end fantasy numbers or score the ball at the rate that they're currently scoring. Obviously, it's not sustainable anyways, but I think that they'll come back down. So me personally, like, I would be selling like him. And honestly, if I can get, and this is another player that I know you love, if I can trade Alvin Kamara for Jahmyr Gibbs, like, I'm doing that 100% of the time.
What?
So absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Trading Kamara for Gibbs?
I think that here's the thing. I don't even think that you could do it 1-for-1. I think that you could get another piece on top of Jahmyr Gibbs for Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara has gotten like, it's like Cooper Kupp, where these guys we're not going where they're currently. If we were to redraft today, I guarantee Alvin Kamara would go ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think is insane. We're talking week 3.
We're talking week 3 basis last year.
Bro, this is week 3 we're talking about, and we're blowing shit out of proportion. We do this every single year. Like, yes, you have to reassess and everything, but there's no way in hell that I would want Alvin Kamara over Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a better offense, and I know that the Saints offenses look good. I'd be selling on Rashid Shaheed, absolutely. If I can get anything that's close to wide receiver 2 for Rashid Shaheed, I'd be getting that. I'd be getting like even an RB2 out of Rashid Shaheed. Give me anything there. And for Alvin Kamara, if I can get an elite asset, if I can get like, once again,
why would you try to get an elite asset when Alvin Kamara is an elite asset?
I think this offense is going to plummet back down to earth. I still think it's going to be decent, but like, which offense would I rather have? The guy who's attached to Detroit or the guy who's attached to the Saints? 100%.
No, but you can say the same thing for last year, because last year the offense was bad. Last year was regular at best, and Alvin Kamara was still RB3 on a points per game basis. That's the thing I'm getting to, is like, yeah, even with Gibbs, he's in a timeshare right now.
If I don't know the exact numbers, I can't say this right now, but if I went and I looked at Jahmyr Gibbs week 10, once he became the full-time player, week 10 through whatever, I guarantee he was averaging more fantasy points per game than Alvin Kamara. And what we saw last week was Jahmyr Gibbs' snap share once again jumped up, and he's out snapping Dave Montgomery, which he's going to do throughout the rest of the season. Like, week 1 was an anomaly. He was coming off a hamstring injury. Like Jahmyr Gibbs he's only going to continue to rise in this offense, and he's going to see more work. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy that I would 100% want. I guarantee you at the end of the year, he'll outscore Alvin Kamara, and you'll be like, you know what, Tyler, you're right. You're right all along. Yeah, I should have listened to you. Just like Jahmyr I should have listened to you about Devon Achane.
After week 10, Jahmyr Gibbs was the RB6 last year. Alvin Kamara, the RB12.
Let's go, baby. I told you.
But hey, let's not do that, because the last couple games Kamara didn't play, though. So he played limited snaps in some of those games.
He's kind of ass.
Nah, he good. Yeah, Alvin Kamara, that dude. Last 2, let's get into him real quick. Marvin Harrison, are you buying or selling right now off of one of the more impressive quarters you'll ever see? You buying or selling right now?
I would, I wouldn't be buying. Like, would I hold or sell? Hold or sell?
Better question. Wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2?
I would say I view him as a wide receiver, like a back end wide receiver 1. Yes.
I think he's more inconsistencies coming. I got him as a wide receiver 2. So,
well, let me ask you this.
That far off.
Do you think later in the season, though, like, he's going to be that, like, how I've always viewed Marv is like an end of the season winner. Like, I think he's going to be late in the season. Guess what? They get the Rams. I'm pretty sure in the fantasy championship, they get the Rams. So there you go. Like, I don't know what the exact schedule is. I want to say Arizona has a good fantasy schedule in the playoffs. So,
they do. They have. I want to say I have that even in my draft guide. I want to say I put like that Marv was one of. It's either good or bad. I can't remember. Like, it's either really good or really bad. I want to say it's really good.
Yeah.
So Harrison, the only thing I can see with Harrison is like just as far as your consistency. Oh no, it's tough. They got Christian Gonzalez, and then he's got J.C. Horn, and then obviously this Ram secondary is ass. But we'll see. They could be better. Tre'Davious White just coming off of the injury, maybe he's better. But yeah, it's a little difficult coming in. And before that they got Seattle twice and Minnesota. So I don't know. I have Marv as like a wide receiver too, just fluctuating fantasy value. I think that he's going to provide some mega weeks. Maybe when it's all said and done, he's like a back end wide receiver 1. I just think on most weeks, I would rather have him as like my wide receiver 2 than my locked in wide receiver 1. Like I would much prefer to have like a Garrett Wilson, a Devontae. I would just rather have the brand name over Marvin Harrison right now.
That's fair.
Another wide receiver 1 that has become a wide receiver 1, Nico Collins. I shitted on his name earlier this offseason. I was like, oh, you think Nico Collins can be a wide receiver 1? You don't know what you're talking, but he is. And he's looked the part, obviously continuing the streak from last year. I have a couple concerns about him, but I want to get your opinion on this first. Nico Collins, is he a top 5 receiver the rest of the way? Or is he outside of the top 12? Which is more likely? He's top 5 the rest of the way? Or he's outside of the top 12 rest of the way? Which is more likely?
I would say if I had to pick one, I would say top 5. And the reason why
top
is just
5?
Yeah. If I had to pick a top 5 or outside the top 12, give me top 5. And the reason why is like I think that people hate on Nico because he didn't really do anything for the first couple of years of his career, right? Like he's not the guy who hit the ground running his rookie season. He's this third-year breakout, and you could say like, well, he was playing with Davis Mills. Like Davis Mills I think he's still the backup there, but like Davis Mills was complete and utter ass, and also Nico Collins was banged up his second season when you started to see like. I don't even want to say a breakout because it was not very good, but it was like a breakout in terms of like for Houston, because Houston was so bad at that point that he started to outproduce Brandon Cooks and started kind of overtaking him as the number 1 for like a few weeks there in the middle of the season. Then he ended up getting hurt. So but if you look at the numbers last year, Nico Collins was arguably one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL by the pure numbers. Yards per out run was so good. He was coming down off of first contact. I want to say it was only like 33% of the time. Like the dude was, and that's what you saw on Monday night too. Like this dude he's so big and he's so strong, but he's able to move so well that like he doesn't come down at their first contact. He's always putting up yards. He's always open. Like I just think that Nico Collins is an elite wide receiver that I think kind of gets that disrespect because he's not, it doesn't have the big name right now. He's not Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out of college. He's this guy who broke out late that is just picking up right where he left off, and he has even more competition right now. The dude is a stud, and he's playing with one of the best in the league.
I was thinking, my thought process was that Nico was a good receiver, not as good as Stephon Diggs. That was my thought process coming into the year, and that when you trade for a player like Diggs who's commanded the amount of targets he has, that's the player you go with. That thinking was incredibly wrong because I needed to believe more so in the talent in Nico Collins than I did. And when I watch him, I mean, he reminds me a lot of like Terrell Owens, bro. Like that's the kind of, when I watch him, I'm like, they were saying, I know they say like a lot of Andre Johnson on the broadcast, but he reminds me so much of like T.O., just able to do a lot after the catch, is a good receiver. I'm not calling him T.O., and I don't want this podcast to go that way. Yeah. But I can see a lot of sticking power when it comes to his production. The concern I have is, do teams adjust to this now? Right? Yeah. You have Joe Mixon, you have Nico Collins, you have Diggs, you have Tank Dell. And obviously you want that ball to try to go throughout. But if the team notices, hey, one guy is killing us all season, we have 2 other very good options, now we can go to this. My concern is, does the team switch to that? That's where the top 5 thing for me is a little bit harder to get to.
Yeah.
So I can admit I'm wrong on a player. Like I can admit I was wrong on Nico Collins. That's fine. I don't want to go there right now. But the part that concerns me with him getting top 5 is, does he have the ceiling that allows him to do that within this offense where, to be honest, we're kind of seeing CJ Stroud play a different role this year too. This isn't sling it, air it out to every single receiver possible. They're doing this thing through the ground game.
Yeah, well, and we'll have to see though, because Joe Mixon's banged up too. So
we will.
We'll have to see what happens this week. Who do they get this week? Minnesota, right?
Yeah, the Minnesota this week in Minnesota. Good test for him against Flores.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and also a good test for. Well, I mean, Minnesota had San Francisco last week, but Houston's defense looks pretty good too. I don't think people.
Be an elite unit.
It is. This is going to be just a really good team in general, all season long. That could honestly maybe push the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll have to see.
We will have to see. But Tyler, we covered a lot today, man. A lot of teams. Y'all make sure to show us some love in the chat. We'll be back next week talking week 3 and week 4. But until then, it's Justin Henry, Tyler Helf. We will see y'all on the next one. Peace out.